to the topic today. Let's think here. 1900 to 2,000 years ago, somewhere around there, at this exact time of year, a tragedy happened. A tragedy occurred over right around 20,000. Is that about right?
24?
24,000
Yeah.
of Rabbi Akiva's disciples, his students, died in a plague. Now, 24,000, that's a lot of people. Even today, I mean, this would be a top news story. This is pretty big.
That's right.
They died in a plague. Now, the amazing thing about this is the medical examiner and the people that came up with the diagnosis of the plague, it wasn't caused by rats, by rat bites, or by flea bites that happened sometimes in communal areas back in those days that caused the plague. The medical examiner decided the cause of this plague was disrespect. Disrespect for each other. That's what he decided there. Now, okay, so that's what the cause of the plague was, and that's a tough one to swallow. We wonder why today, a couple thousand years later, that this Jewish holiday isn't really going to Lag BaOmer, which part of Lag BaOmer is celebrating the end of this plague, and we wonder why the Jews today really aren't up on Lag BaOmer, why it's not a biggie. If you went to the mall today and saw 100 Jews and asked them on Lag BaOmer, I'm sure there would just be a small percentage that would even know what it is.
Right.
It's not a real biggie. It's not up in the top 10. So, I mean, disrespect. I think that's why. I mean, disrespect today. I mean, disrespect is common as like finding a tall, muscular guy with Prada shoes and a skirt in West Hollywood. I mean, that's how common disrespect is. It's pretty common.
That's right.
It's everywhere. I mean, like I go home for work, I turn on the news, I sit there, and this guy's yelling at this guy because he's lying, and this guy's calling this guy that. If you turn on any sitcom today, which I don't really watch sitcoms, every time they turn on the laugh track, it's because they just disrespected somebody else. This guy's short, he's fat, he's tall, he's gay, he's straight, and that's what it is. So how can we today, because I know your discussion about this, your argument about this is we need to learn from history. But how can we today relate to such a thing when disrespect is such a common part of our society? And I don't see any plagues going on here.
So you know what? You want to learn from history, and how do you learn from history? So I will tell you, in general, I learned from history. Then there's this particular piece of history to learn from. But we have to first set up an approach to history in general that we don't have. And every time you went to history class, they always told you whoever doesn't learn from history is condemned to repeat it and all that stuff, which actually happens to be true, because see, that keep happening all over and over again.
My teacher repeated that over and over again.
Right. Everyone repeats it over and over again, and no one does it, and which is why so many people lost their money in the last crash, because why did the last crash happen in 2008? The one before that was in 1929. Okay, because that meant that there were 80 years in between those two crashes. What happens in 80 years?
It's a lifespan there.
Right. All the people that learned about the first one were gone, so now you got a new group of people that can't possibly remember what happened 80 years ago, because that would mean they were learning history. So you have a whole new group of people. Bam, there it is. Right? This takes one lifetime.
We don't listen to our own advice too well.
All it took was one good, bona fide lifetime, and just like 80 years. It's just classic. But here's the way to get out of this. And this is why, let's say if you come into an Orthodox Jewish synagogue right now, this is always happening. We're always doing something or another, and people say, why are you doing that? Well, because 3,000 years ago, such and such happened. And why are you doing this? Well, because 1,500 years ago, such and such happened. And why are you doing that? Well, because it's always like, and especially right now, for example, there's little nuances in the prayers. We change one little prayer that's usually we don't say on certain times, but we do say them this period of time. Why? Because right now, this period of time happens to be, aside from Rabbi Akiva, which is 2,000 years ago, the First Crusade. The First Crusade was, they were marching right now, during this time of year, they were marching, they were starting to kill Jews right now, on their way to the Holy Land for their crusade. It was right during this time of year, and that was in 1096, so that is 1,000 years ago, right, roughly. And we still, you can tell it happened because now in our synagogues we make a little change in the prayers, which indicates that went on. We're always like focusing on all these events that happen. Why is that? So here's an attitude.
Throw a quick theory in.
Yeah.
I'm thinking it's a dietary thing for Jews. They fast so much. You have so many holidays a year. You fast so much, you lose weight.
Right. You need to be mourning. Where you're either feasting or famining, right?
So you're fasting. It's dietary thing. Am I
Right.
wrong on that one?
Yeah. It's either we're celebrating a party,
Right.
or we're celebrating or we're mourning a tragedy, and that's we just got to go from party to
We should
tragedy.
be the most eating disorder people there are. We're
Right.
either we're in one way or another we're binging.
Right. And it seems as though we're always living in the past.
Yeah, that's true.
That's a problem. Like, you know what? Why can't we just be living for right now? Live for the future? Why are we always so rooted in the past? Now, if I were to talk to you, for example, about events that happened in your lifetime, like do you remember how old you were when you first went to college? Yes. Do you remember what time of year it was when you first went to college? Yeah, you probably remember like who your first roommates were in college. Even going back before that, you probably remember all kinds of things that were very significant to you. If something happened when you were a kid, growing up, that really like affected the town, you remember that. Absolutely. You know, the tornado that hit the town, or whatever it was, the big power outage when you were, you remember all those things.
And the 1906 earthquake, you remember? As a kid.
Right, that's right. That's right. And tell you what, the truth, it wasn't the earthquake, it was the fires afterwards. That was the real problem.
Oh,
Yeah.
right.
Yeah. Everyone knows it was the fires.
Right.
So anyway, the thing is, in your own lifetime, these events are important. Not only that, you even remember stuff like your first Valentine's card you got, or people remember all kinds of little itsy bitsy things. If they had some event that happened in their life, like maybe a parent took ill, or certainly parents divorced, or all kinds of things. Even when their dog died, people remember this stuff. Why? Because it happened to you.
Yep.
And since it happened to you, it was formative, and it impacted you, and you still remember that. Here's the deal with the Jewish people. The Jewish people view themselves as one person.
Okay.
It's not really like there was these Jews back then, and then there were Jews a century later, and Jews 10 centuries later, and all. The Jews view themselves historically as one person. One person, one family, one group, whatever you want to say, but who are walking through time. They're going from point A to point B, and we are on this journey. It's been all of my life. So, you remember when that stuff happened to all the Rabbi Akiva students? Sure I do. That was a seminal point in my development. It happened to us, and the lessons from it that we think about, and even nowadays we think about. I'll go back and think about something happened to me as a child, and sometimes it'll dawn on me. Now as an adult, think about that. I realize, what? I really took a bad lesson for that, or it really took me a long time to get over that, or just now as an adult, I realize I have to put that behind me, or learn a different lesson from that, or whatever it is.
Right.
So I keep revisiting these things as I go on because they are part of me and my personal experience. So all of these things, whether it be the First Crusade or Rabbi Akiva students dying, there are certain events that happen in Jewish history that we as a people said, this is so significant, we're not going to forget about this. And therefore, it happened to me. Rabbi Akiva students dying is something that happened to me. And I've got to struggle with it. I got to make sense of it. And I got to move. Just like the Holocaust, we all know about it. To us, it happened. It happened. It's a fact, okay? And every Jew is colored by another. Colored by it. If it was parents or people that you knew, you were even more colored by it. And it carries on for a long period of time. But when I hear, like, for example, I think, I'm not sure about the dates, but I was just reading something about a tribute being done for the, I don't know how many, was it 1 million Armenians that were killed?
I think it was 100 years ago.
100 years ago, this was the 100-year anniversary. Okay, so I read about that, and then I just moved on. Didn't mean anything to me.
Right.
Didn't stop and ponder it. Didn't stop and get into it. To tell you the truth, didn't even stop to know, like, who killed them. You know, I thought, wow, that's pretty bad. Not nice. Turks, yeah. I'm thinking, like, not nice people. You know, I don't care what they did and what was the situation. It's really not nice. But I really didn't spend a lot of time, like, delving into it and understanding it and understanding the root causes and all that stuff, because it wasn't me. Right? It wasn't me. Now, yes, nowadays everyone talks about this global experience, but the interesting thing about having this global experience and that everyone's supposed to feel and understand and relate to, so it turns out that we really don't feel and understand and relate to anybody. Now, if you're an Armenian, I'm into the fact that, you know, this is 100 years ago, is probably very significant to you. And it means a lot. And you should, like, dwell on that and focus on that and say, what does that mean for you? And what does that mean for your future? I'm totally into it. Now, for me, it wasn't me. I don't deny them theirs. I got mine. I need to dwell on mine. But mine is me. It really is me. That is my experience that happened, and all the little events along the way, and some of them big events, little events, they all. So that's the attitude of there being me. It's not like I am divorced from it. It is actually me, and therefore I need to get into it. I can't just brush past it. Can you imagine you get an Armenian today, and you say to him, you know, today is the 100th anniversary of the Armenian genocide. And the Armenian says, so what? You go like, man, you know, you're missing it. You're missing the whole thing. Like, you know, it's because it's you. It's not me. I'm just, you know, I drive for Uber. I mean, you know, what do I know? I'm living here. I'm living in Chicago, and I drive for Uber. I mean, what do I know about Armenian genocide? What do I care? Okay, well, maybe if he feels like that, then he feels like that. That's what's happening now in our more universalistic society, where we're not attached to anything, we're not associated with anything. But with Jews, and a lot of Jews feel like that, Orthodox Jews feel very much that it was me. You know, Rabbi Akiva's students died. That affected me because it was me that they died on. It was my people, and it happened to me, and it was my scholars, and my life would have been actually changed had they not died. And if they died, my life would have changed. And
I mean, it does seem to, you know, historically, it is just Jews that are really like this. I mean, and you don't see many Italians once a year mourning in Pompeii. You know,
right.
And they're not like, oh my God, what happened to us?
That's right. That's
you
right.
don't see it happening. So I mean, it really does seem to be. Are we the only people that has this eternal identity?
Yeah. So that's really the deal. It's like it's hard to find anyone else in the world that keeps hooked in to that identity for such a long period of time. The Jews are pretty unique when it comes to that. There isn't anyone, even people. I mean, you don't see. I've never heard at all that anyone having any awareness, for example, African Americans, I've never heard of any date mentioned having anything to do with anything that ever happened in Africa. If they're African Americans, and that's the way they're titled by self-definition, so they define themselves as African Americans, meaning their Africanism is an important part of their identity. And I never have heard of like a date or a time or an event that ever happened in Africa that they ever hearkened back to. I've never heard of one. You know, it's very interesting. I'm African American because my origin is African. African experience, I don't know. I don't know anything about it. Maybe I needed to take more African studies in. I've never heard of. You know, Armenians are making a big deal about this thing 100 years ago. There are certain cases. What happens for most people is after they just get.
Islam a little bit because I know the president was really concerned about the Crusades. He had a speech about the other day.
Right.
So
That's right.
I mean, he might be the only one, but he remembered that the Christians persecuted the
Right.
Muslims. I mean,
Right.
not everybody else remembers.
And Muslims do recall dates. I mean, they'll tell you that this is the date that Muhammad went to here, or this is the date that, you know, they have date. This is the date of the birth of Ali, or this is the date of the, depending on, you know, who you know, the Shias and the Sunni and all that. You know, they have their dates, they have their times, and they do focus on historical events, you know, so religious groups. But people in general, as they float around, and it gets more and more as we get this transient type of world, that we float around and we don't associate and identify with things. So someone, you know, it's kind of interesting. Someone picks up and they move to the United States, and they're whatever it is, Asian American now, and so what are they celebrating on Thanksgiving, or what are they celebrating on, you know? So what we do is we're universalizing all of these messages, but the idea is that everyone just sort of picks and chooses and experiences as they wish to experience. What the Jews, what Orthodox Jews continue over and over again is personalized experience. That was me. I was there when Rabbi Akiva's students were dying, and it really impacted me. I was there at the First Crusade, and that really impacted me. I was there for the Chmielnicki massacres, and it really impacted me. I was there at Purim, and it impacted me, and on and on and on.
Well, I mean, you know me, I never want to go to pick on progressives or progressivism or anything like that, 'cause it's not like me. But it seems to be, again, I'm going to go back right here, in a progressive society, there's no difference between, you have no identity. A boy and a girl, a man and a woman, the same thing, gay, straight, whatever. There are no differences between peoples because we're all the same.
What's the name of the society?
The progressive society?
Progressive.
Progressive.
Right, because the society only believes in progress. Progress means that it was bad back there and better over there. So we're only looking to get past the past, because the past is only the place where it wasn't good, and now I want progress is defined as good because I progress, I move forward from that bad place to a better place.
So you probably aren't not accepted then in progressive society. I hate to say it because you have not progressed. You're still talking about what happened 1900 and some years ago today.
Right.
I mean, as you said, you're not shaving here.
That's right.
Whatever.
That's right. Not only that, I think that message is actually more relevant than what happened then.
I sure do
Right.
too.
Because we have this other dictum in Torah thought, and that is, let's say we talk about the exile from Jerusalem. So any generation that hasn't fixed the problem, it is still responsible for the problem, which means that I'm repeating the mistake. If the problem hasn't been fixed, I am currently repeating the mistake. So therefore, we delve into what was the problem? Why did those people die? Because the reason why they died, and I'm still remembering it, is obviously I haven't fixed the reason why they died. And since I haven't fixed, me personally, haven't fixed why they died, it's still relevant. As soon as we fix it, then we can probably forget it. We can probably move on.
And I agree. Listen, I think the study of history and what's past is obviously a clear idea of how to fix the future. I mean, listen, if you go to West Point today, that's probably only a good example. They're going to tell you exactly what Grant did right and what Grant did wrong.
That's right.
In the Battle of Cold Harbor. I mean, they're going to tell you that, and they're going to tell you even in the Mexican War what we did right and what wrong. That's probably the only other area where people will believe in that. And history does teach us the battles back in the days of Thermopylae are not that much different than the battles are today in the Middle East. And I agree with that, but I think it's the same way in living. And I think that's where progressivism makes the biggest mistake. We're smarter, we're better than they were back then, says a progressive. Where I think a Jew, and maybe a military historian, says, no, let's go see what happened. We've got all these thousands of years of history. Let's see what happened, what we can learn.
As a matter of fact, I actually don't believe in the concept of progress, which means that people get better or that they necessarily change. Certainly not smarter. I don't think that people today are any smarter than they ever were. I think that people always, as I am fond of saying, everyone who ever lived in modern times. Everyone lived in modern times. And I would venture to say that throughout history, you talk to people and they always thought that now we're modern. You know, those people back then, they were like, but now we're modern.
We're moderner.
Right, right. But now we got it. You know, we got it. They didn't get it, but we get it. And I don't think that anyone has ever gotten it any better than anyone else. No. I think that people are, you know, the way they always were, and they experience, they have the same fears, and they have the same aspirations, and it's been a universal, really a universal experience all the way through. And if you're a Jew, then the Jews' experience has been a Jewish experience all the way through. And it's just one, so you're a Jew today, that's the same as being a Jew back then. And you're not Jew today, there's a not Jew back then, so on and so forth. So, you know, we constantly are experiencing, and we have to always keep focused. I'm one person, it's one person, and I can't ignore my own past. Who would ignore their own past and say that my own past, everyone realizes that their own past is meaningful to them. Everyone realizes the experience you had when your mother and your father, when you were a kid, in your community, in your schools, and your teachers, and your friends, and your siblings, all that stuff is so much a part of what you are. So, as a Jew, it's just been like a long childhood. You know, it just goes back like some thousands of years.
Thousands of years, isn't it?
Yeah.
I mean, I think you hit the one group of people, Jews are a good example of relying on their history or relying on what they've learned over the years. But again, as you said, Jews accept that maybe Rashi, who lived thousands of years ago, even though he didn't have the internet, and even though he didn't have access to what's going on in Hollywood, he was a pretty smart guy. Maimonides, he was a pretty smart guy. Where
right.
That or have this role in society, and we're smart enough today that you can have gay marriage and regular marriage. So I think Jewish people, traditional Jewish people, are smart enough to learn that no, they were smart people back then, and we can learn exactly what happened. Right now, then you were in the because you didn't believe it. Then you know, so different.
And if you want to bring that one up, because you know nowadays, like everyone, you know, has to, you know, like I heard sports last night. I think the Braves lost 5-4. Say who's gay, right? I mean, like I thought, like you have to always like have you know, everything has to have a homosexual tie-in, you know, like I can't.
We're so 2012. It's transgender.
Yeah, right.
That's such a problem. Did you not watch the Bruce Jenner interview?
No, I missed that one. Yeah. So you know, everything. Societies have been exactly where we are right now before. There have been societies, and those societies were made up of intelligent folks. I mean, there was once a really smart guy. His name was Plato. Plato, he was a smart guy. Yeah, right. That's right. The dog guy. Yeah, right. It's kind of how you have such a smart dog. But okay, you know, Plato, and then later on is, you know, then you got a guy named Socrates. You know, these are some pretty smart fellows, you know. And in their day and age, they had a lot of these issues, and their societies came up with some of the same decisions that our current society is. Now, of course, one might want to look back at those societies, study that, see what were the results of that, why did they implement it, what were the causes, what were the attitudes, how did it all end up? Yeah, you know, we might want to do that. But that if you progress, if you're progressive, then you can't believe that back then they were the same, because progress, we move forward. That, you know, that really is a problem, because if you see that people are all one and the same, then you can learn from them. If not, then it sounds like your history teacher, those who do not study history. Yeah.
Well, I think Rabbi Friedman hit the progressive nail on the head on this one. This is a pretty interesting topic, and you know, it's something to think about. Okay, so celebrate Lag BaOmer. You know.
So we got Lag BaOmer. So just a quick word about those students of Rabbi Akiva. You know, Rabbi Akiva had all these students, and they were all great scholars, and then they all died. Now, it's hard to imagine that they were like, you know, blowing spitballs at each other and, pulling the chair. A guy was sitting down, he pulled the chair out from under the other. What do you mean? Like what it says, the Talmud says because they disrespected each other. So hard to hear that they were just like, tripping each other and stuff like that. Actually, one of my rabbis of Weinberg explained that they were all very great. They were students. They were destined to become leaders in the community. What the problem was, they did not appreciate each other as the future leaders of the community. In other words, if each guy, when they were sitting in school, like in their yeshiva, if each guy realized, I'm sitting next to the person who's going to be the head of such and such a community, the head of this, who's going to be a great teacher, who's going to be a great activist for the Jewish people, they just treated each other like, yeah, we're a bunch of students, and they didn't show each other any particular respect, but they were really sitting with great people, future great people. And we have to appreciate that and give other people respect, not for what they are, but for what they can and perhaps will be. But just when you look at someone else, you have to look at their potential and respect them for their potential. It's a different way of looking at respect, not for what he is right now, but for what that person could be. And that talks about, if you're really worried about progress and progressive, then you should really be respecting for people for what they could be and showing that tremendous respect and the potential in a person. It's an amazing thing. Yeah. And because they didn't, so why'd God hit them so hard? Because of that flaw, because since they were destined to be the leadership, if the leadership didn't appreciate that, that was going to have a bad impact on the community. Wow. And therefore, we got to study that, try to fix it ourselves. It all stopped on the 33rd day of the counting of the Omer, which we started on the second day after Passover. 4 days, right there. So today is 23, and so 33 is next Thursday. And on that day, we have big celebrations and parties because that was the day that all the dying stopped. And those 24,000 stopped dying, so we're really happy about that. Coming up, and only 10 more days. In the meantime, I got 10 more days to put up with this beard. It's not getting any better.
All right, well, that's it. 10 more days, we'll have a party. Maybe we'll talk about it again.
Yeah.
All right, we'll see you next week. You got the wrap-up.